I have a very fortunate thing with tea at the moment. Well, it's my taste buds, but every time I make a cup of tea, it tastes of fish. I mean, that's just not right, is it?
What?
It
I
does.
You
have.
need to
I think I
descale your kettle.
No, could it be in your dishwasher?
I haven't got a dishwasher.
Um,
It's a washing up bowl. I'll tell you what it is.
the
Sorry,
water.
it's no. I wash the dogs have a lot of sardines and stuff, and I wash the containers out to put them in. Oh God, that's what it is. That explains it. Thanks, guys. I've been coached out of my horrible, disgusting
Oh,
tasting
God.
cup of tea now.
Right, I'm
when
going to
you
stop the
really want a nice,
recording there. That is the whole episode.
you want a really nice hot cup of tea, don't you, when you're doing this, or something similar?
You love those dogs far too much.
I know.
It's getting concerning.
Oh, they like their sardines. There we are. I like my mackerel fillets too, so I wash my tin. This is too much information. Have you missed me, guys?
Yes, we've missed you so much. Right.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Naked Coach Collective. We've got myself, Dee, and Sarah today. B is prepping for a speaking course, so she's not able to join us today. Okay, today's episode is all about vulnerability in coaching. Now, when I saw this topic, when we were writing down the content calendar, I saw it and I thought, whose perspective is this from? Is it from the coach's perspective or the coachee's perspective? So I'll start with that question for Sarah, who looks petrified that I was going to ask her that question then.
I think, with looking at where I'm at on my own journey with coaching, I am taking it initially from the coach's perspective, because we do show vulnerability. It's a very natural feeling to have. None of us like to actually show it to anybody else, though. But I think when we are training to be coaches, and we're coached a lot with each other, it's something that crops up. And I do think if you, as a coach, aren't able to show some vulnerability to other coaches and also to your coachees, I don't think you can come across as very authentic with that. I think it's really essential to promote and show your authenticity. And it's all part of telling our own stories, isn't it? We've all got our stories. We're all going off in different directions with coaching and constantly learning. And life, whatever life throws at you, you're going to show your vulnerabilities. I feel it's like a upside down strength, if that makes sense. It's
upside down strength.
Yeah, we don't like to show it, but actually when we do, people engage with it. If someone stood in front of me, say somebody who was quite, I don't know, well known in coaching field and was really cocksure themselves, that would absolutely turn me off. They would not get anything from me as a person, because it's just not my bag. Sorry. And the whole thing about coaching is digging deep, isn't it? Getting to the nitty gritty and supporting your coachee to find that place, to find out what they're initially looking for, but often what we find through conversation may be something different. And often it comes with vulnerability. I see it as a little bit of I'd start off with the coaches for recognizing it, using it as a tool, being aware of it yourself, then obviously letting it flow into working with coachees and giving them a really safe environment to share their own vulnerabilities. What do you reckon, folks?
I'm just trying to wrap my head around the upside down strength.
Yeah. It's my own.
It's not my bag. Not my bag, baby.
It's proper lingo. Proper lingo. This. I've been working on these books for ages. Proper coaching lingo. This.
Dee, what about yourself? What does vulnerability in coaching mean to you?
Well, I agree with Sarah, but I think, even though we're talking about coaching here, it's quite good to start with a differentiation or a definition of vulnerability, as opposed to victimhood or being a victim, because I mean in the larger world, in our worlds at the moment, our societies, our political environments, and all of this, there's a lot of vulnerability and victims flying around, and the two words are almost interchangeable. But within coaching, I think, because I was thinking about the difference between, a victim, something is happening to them that's out of their control, and it's either happening, it's really happening, or also you can get the victim mentality, it's in their head, or it's real or perceived. Whereas I think vulnerability isn't necessarily always bad. It's not always a bad thing that happens, and it's not happening to you in a sense. I thought that the differentiation would be that, if you're showing vulnerability, you're sharing your experiences, which you don't, as human beings, we need to share our experiences in a lot of ways, but we don't always, and we don't share experiences that necessarily don't always shine a good light on us. And if we are, but that's not being a victim, but that is being vulnerable if you let that, if you express that. And in a coaching scenario, as a coach, I think if you show vulnerability, you are offering your coachee the opportunity to do the same, which means that they then are able to potentially talk about things that they may have wanted to keep, felt like they should keep hidden. I also think that it's really important that a coach isn't vulnerable without making sure that it's appropriate and relevant to whatever is happening in that conversation at the time. Also, in human interaction, if you express vulnerability, you are almost by default putting that other person to whom you've expressed your vulnerability, you're putting them in a position of making them feel like they want to help you. So as a coach, that's not your role. You're not to put yourself in that position. You are helping them. So I think, whereas what Sarah said about the power of the coach being vulnerable, I totally agree with that. But I think before that, you need to ask for permission. I mean, for want of a better way of putting it, sort of say to I feel a situation. You've reminded me of something that happened to me. It is appropriate, and it's relevant to this, and I think you may find something useful in it. Would you mind if I shared it? And sort of that sort of a way. But also then what happens is that then there is a problem in the air. So from a coach's perspective, I wouldn't want to share a vulnerable moment with anybody that I'm coaching unless I've actually come to the other side of it, so I can show them that there is a resolution available. This is not the end of the world, and this is somewhere I can empower that person by taking on my own experience, by giving it to them. Do you see what I mean? So I think there's a lot there that we can still unpick, but I would be aware of maintaining the balance of who's getting the help here.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I kind of agree with everything you were saying there. And there's also, I suppose it's kind of a judgment call as well, depending on what your client is like as a person and how willing to open up they are. And I haven't really come across it in any coaching I've done as of yet where I felt I've had to be vulnerable and tell them a story of something I've overcome that would put me in like a vulnerable place, so to speak. I've never really come across it in my coaching, really. I'm not sure why, but I must be tending to speak to people who are already open and willing to have those kind of conversations. So I suppose it's kind of that judgment call whilst you're in the situation, isn't it? If someone's hiding something and they're not willing to talk, I suppose opening up about some kind of vulnerability can often initiate them to open up themselves.
Yeah, it builds trust, doesn't it? So you're
Yeah.
you're trusting, you're giving them something of yourself that is not known to the wider world. So you're building a trust with them, and therefore you're encouraging them to trust you back, to give you, to give you that. And also you are, in a way, I mean, yes, I have got a teaching background, so I suppose this word, you're modeling overcoming a an event, a thing, or something that's happening to you. You're modeling it to them, and you're giving them, another teaching term, you're giving them scaffolds. You're giving them the steps on the ladder through your own experience.
Yeah, and it's a fine line, isn't it? It's a real sort of scales balancing act about when you share it, what you share it, how you come to share it, and the background to it. And it's making sure, like you said, that yours doesn't completely swamp what you're
Mm.
dealing with. I mean, yeah, and I think, I don't know about you guys, but you do come across people in this arena, not just coaches, any sort of helping environments where you do get the people that you question, are they in it for the right reasons?
Are
Because
you talking
often
about
they
the
can,
coaches or the coachees?
the coaches,
Right.
that they can overshare and they get something from that
Yeah.
aspect of it,
Mm.
which sometimes can take over the reason we're coaching,
Yeah, you have to be careful on that point as well,
Yeah.
because it has to be, I mean, it has to come back down to, is it going to serve your the person who you're trying to serve here? Is your telling them your story going to serve them in any way? Is it going to build their trust? Is it going to make them confident enough to speak to you? Is it going to help them to solve problems, their own problems? Is it going to help them to be creative in their thought? It, it's I mean, I don't know if it is easy to forget that you're actually in a coaching conversation. I don't find it difficult. I do remember that this is a coaching conversation. You're not just having a chat with your mates over a drink.
Mm.
It's sort of it stays in your mind. I think when you've experienced both sides, as we all have, both sides of the coaching, I think it does stay in your mind that I don't want to say value or power in a way that puts people in places. I don't mean it like that. I mean it like just from a perspective of being there for support, help, guidance, and being the one to do the serving.
Yeah, I think it's quite important for me anyway when I take on a new client and we kind of have the first initial call, I kind of make it very clear that, look, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to coach and help you get the best out of yourself. I'm not here to be your friend. There has been, like, when you go through all the practice coaching and you're having coaching sessions with people, when you're practicing and you kind of get into like just friendly conversations. And then I've always thought, well, is it right that we continue to have that kind of coaching relationship with each other because we're kind of friends as well? It's a bit of a mixed ground, isn't it? But just coming back to the power of vulnerability in
Yeah.
coaching and what that word power means to you within that situation of the vulnerability in coaching. For me, it's being able to open up a safe space
Yeah.
for a client to allow them to share and have these breakthroughs. What about yourself, Sarah? What does the power of vulnerability in coaching mean? That word,
I
the
think when I
power, and what does that hold for you?
power of it, I think the power, like I say, the power comes from giving the person the opportunity, which is like you just said, the space they need to feel that they can express what they need to. I think it again, coaching is a phenomenal career in the sense that this one aspect, it just slots in with so many others. It builds trust. If you've balanced it rightly and you're showing a degree of vulnerability to facilitate your coachee opening up and being able to express that, it automatically improves the rapport therapeutic relationship. It builds up the trust. I think it gives a lot of weight to increasing both parties' authenticity within that coaching relationship that you've got. I think it just, we talk about having toolboxes and going up ladders and stuff like that, don't we? It just accelerates that potential within that relationship and the potential for the coachee to move forward as well. So I would say those aspects are important: the trust, the authenticity, the strengthening of the rapport. It all becomes quite powerful from those things.
Absolutely, I love that authenticity, and that's where as well you have to be careful, because it may just not be authentic you to share your vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
In which case, it's going to be blatantly obvious to anyone that, oh, she's just telling me a story because, she thinks it'll fit in. But, I think the authenticity is a really powerful thing. And what you get when you give your authentic self is hopefully you get an authentic self back. And that's when you can start doing the deeper work. Because if people have got a wall up, because they think they can't tell you certain things because whatever, for whatever reason, you're not going to be able to dig deep and get those creative ideas and solutions out, right? So you have to get past that. So a coach appropriately, authentically vulnerable will have opened themselves up. They will have exposed themselves in a way that hopefully would encourage that higher level of openness as well. So the power there is held by both. I think they're both, because it's often easy to think of power as a negative term, but I think in this instance it's hugely powerful. is hugely appropriate that you share the power even within a coachee situation.
Actually, you've just really tipped the power, the negative connotations of power right on its head there, Dee, by saying share. Haven't you?
Thank you.
Absolutely. I see power as quite a powerful word. I think it might, it's very personal, isn't it? But there are, it's a control power thing. But the way you just then added in sharing it in a therapeutic environment, that's really says it all for me. I think that's great. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think I've kind of approached this from the coach's perspective, just as this little conversation, but from the client perspective, and Dee, you've kind of mentioned it a bit. I think the power of being vulnerable there is you, as a client, you are opening yourself up to so many breakthroughs, so many light bulb moments that you could have. If you are not open, honest, and willing to be vulnerable, then those blind spots are going to stay in your blind spot. Does that make sense? Have I made sense there? Those blind spots are going to stay in your blind spot. Does that make sense?
Well, blind spots are going to stay put, aren't they? They're not going to shift.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Well, yeah, I think from the client perspective, it's important to kind of understand if you are out there and you are looking to get a coach, you will need to be open and honest and willing to be vulnerable when you're speaking with your coach, because that's the only way you're going to be able to uncover those blind spots that are in a blind spot. Will stay in a blind spot if you're not.
It's basically telling them that they will feel uncomfortable with it as well, because that's something that is quite palpable, isn't it? And I know we're going off piece a little bit with the well, no, maybe not the vulnerability side, but it's hard. It's not nice as a person to make someone feel uncomfortable. And you don't intentionally do it, because obviously we're facilitating it and asking the right questions at the right time. often that's the outcome, isn't it? So they become more vulnerable, they're feeling uncomfortable. And as a coach, we've created this environment. So then to keep hold of things like trust, safety, authenticity, and work towards growth, that's a big ask, actually. And I don't know about you guys, but it's just made me realise, whoa, we're juggling all those balls as coaches. And you do not want that person to leave that session feeling uncomfortable. So you've got to let it come out and then sort of turn it around a little bit as well, don't you? So the vulnerability really shows when people are starting to get, it's the whole thing, the body language gets it's the whole thing, isn't it? Persona.
Yeah.
So
yeah, definitely.
You say all of that, so they're getting uncomfortable and you're coaching, you're asking those questions, you're making them feel that way. But where you might have shared some vulnerability or a vulnerable moment or something with them earlier, they are feeling that uncomfortableness, they're feeling that that way, but they're also feeling understood. They're also feeling
safe.
Safe. They're also feeling supported. So they're feeling uncomfortable and stretched. I like the word stretched. They're feeling stretched, but in a supportive environment. So in a safe, in a comfortable, in a comforted, maybe not comfortable, but in a comforted environment. So and they won't leave that session feeling the highlight, the over presiding, the main feeling, presiding feeling. Anyway, the strongest feeling that they'll have when they leave the room, the session, is not going to be one of feeling uncomfortable. They will hopefully remember to feel comforted, to feel supported, to feel understood and valued.
Yeah, and I think that situation of being uncomfortable is only going to lead to some kind of light bulb moment or breakthrough moment for them. So that will be the overriding feeling and thoughts that they have on the session. And that uncomfortable moment, I remember one of my very first ones, and because they tell you on when you're going through all your kind of accreditation and everything, you need to at certain points just stay quiet and let the client think about the question that you've asked them, and they need space to think about the answer, and so you stay quiet. And sometimes you have a client who doesn't like silence and they want to fill that silence with noise. Even just looking at them, you can see them squirming a little, and they're like, ooh. What are you looking at me, Ian? You're right, Dee.
Yeah, I know. I know you've got me in your head there, have you? Or among them?
No, I've got you amongst a couple of others.
Yeah.
From one of our very first practice sessions. What are you looking at me for?
Yeah, you just quoted me, honestly, on air.
It's all right. We're all friends. We're all friends here. Yeah. Apart from when we're in a coaching session, I'm not your friend.
No, we didn't say that. Cut that out of it.
Neither does Dee.
Anymore, because he's not my friend.
Just an acquaintance.
Acquaintance. That's all you need to be.
Yeah.
Totally, I'm not here to make friends.
Though. I was just, it's such a shift from what I imagine in coaching was years and years ago. This, and where Ian says, "I'm not your friend," it's fine. You're not friends, but you are connected, and you are human together. And you, even in that position where you're doing business coaching and entrepreneurial coaching and this sort of stuff, where you showing a vulnerability is going to be a big thing, probably. It serves to humanize the whole situation. And also, when you do that, you realize, the client will realize, the coachee will realize that, gosh, they've got this problem, but they are only human. Other people do feel it. They're not isolated. They're not on their own. And even in suffering, there's a comfort in knowing you're not suffering alone.
I think, if it's shared, and it's bringing in, talking about the coaching professional relationship and not being best buddies, which I completely agree, because you have got to, again, find a balance. It's showing true empathy and compassion, and I think that does come from showing vulnerability as well, doesn't it? Yeah. And then giving them a chance to then self-reflect once it's come out, whatever's been discussed, to have that time, maybe in silence, like you said, Ian, which could be uncomfortable, but then to be able to self-reflect and take it on and hopefully share it again, share where they've got to, isn't it, before that session finishes, so it feels comfortable. Yeah,
absolutely.
And like you say, the light bulb, I mean, we all love the light bulb moments, don't they, because they can come just out of the blue, literally, and you say, and sometimes you get a feeling before your client has clocked that something's really shifted. You get that feeling, don't you, thinking, well, this is it, this is where we need to be, and you get so excited and sit on your hands and start grinning from ear to ear and going, this is gonna be it.
No,
you're like, go on.
I love that.
I knew that. And you want one of those sort of like things where it lets all the confetti down, going, yay!
I've never heard that in words, and yes, that is so true. I was like, oh my God. I really didn't realise that feeling had words, and it does. So thank you, Sarah.
Oh, that's a pleasure. The thing is, it's so nice, we all know what it feels like, and you just get such a, I'm just like, I'm going to pass out with excitement in a minute.
Oh my God, it's there. Come on, you've just got to get it out. Come on.
And if they don't quite get it, and you think, okay, let's just try a different angle here. It's like watching those, when you do those things at the fair with the horses, you have to throw ping pong balls to make the horses to move up in the race. It's like that. Better.
What is coaching to you? It's about chucking those balls into the hole so the horses.
Why isn't it like that for everybody? Come on. So if you're looking for a wacky coach that likes throwing ping pong balls, I'm here.
I'm blown away by this. I absolutely love that you put into words how I feel in situations, and it's just phenomenal. Thank you. Oh my God.
Oh,
I'm having one of those moments.
That's so good. That just shows, we can actually, because sometimes when we discuss feelings can be, they're very difficult to discuss, aren't they? Or describe.
Yeah.
So it's really nice when we get a little bit of a.
I love it. Yeah, absolutely. That is insane. I love that.
Yay!
Is that a good place to end it there?
Yeah,
or is there anything else you wanted to cover off?
No, you said something. I wrote notes here about friends and power, but I can't remember the circle.
Look at you writing notes as we go.
I didn't know you were talking, so I didn't want to interrupt you. And you said something about friends in power, and then we moved on to something else. But so it's absolutely fine.
That's just one thing I've made notes. Ian, you're slacking. Come on. I'm just seeing what else I've got in my notes that I.
Oh,
am I the only one not making notes?
I'm writing notes as we go along, and just sort of as my thoughts come over. Know what we didn't have a chance to do? What we didn't go, it just touched right at the very beginning, very slightly, and I think I'd love to hear your opinions on it as well. Is that difference between victim and vulnerability? The victim and just because I when I started thinking about this topic, it just came into my head, and I thought it would be very interesting to hear your perspectives on that as well.
I think this could be a whole episode on its own.
Yeah.
The whole victim mindset that I see people having just blows my mind. I just cannot get my head around that type of mindset. I just can't compute why people have that victim mindset. So for me, this could be a whole episode on its own for discussion. Maybe you can help me try and understand.
Well, there's a tension, isn't there, from victimhood? So
it's something that feeds on itself.
Yeah.
If a person is starting down, I've got my many years in NHS head on here, and victim mode has such an impact on whether someone in my OT job remains positive, remains independent, moves forward with I've met people who have got profound disabilities, but a fantastic mindset, and they choose to have a good life. And then you'll find somebody else, and I can meet them on the same day. I could give you examples. Somebody that's got something that's niggly for them, nothing massive or profound, but it's the end of the world for them. And I think the danger, and and I talk from experience, because you guys know what I'm like. I'm a bit, flaky with things, but I think if it gets hold of you as a person, it's very destructive. So what I class as victim mode, I think that's quite a difficult area to coach. So I think you're right, Ian, you could have a complete session on how do you unpick this mindset, because especially if it's been entrenched for a long time.
It's the mindset thing that is the key here, isn't it? Your circumstances, two people's circumstances could be exactly the same, and their mindset is what will influence their outcome and the result. So a whole new episode. I love that. I think that's a great idea.
Put that on the list, then put it in a calendar.
I'll put it in the calendar.
The only thing I was going to I don't want to end it in this, so we need to end in something more positive, but it's just highlighting, we mentioned some of the negative aspects of vulnerability. And I think we need to be aware of it as coaches and when we're coaching, because there is a risk of exploitation in some situations. And if people have experienced that again weighs more heavily, doesn't it? And feelings of exposure, again, depending on the niche, any niche really, but some you may feel that more than others. And social judgment was the other one I popped in there. But obviously the main core for any of those negative ones is to create a safe environment. Yeah.
See, one thing I think we did we touch on how coaches expressing their vulnerability will potentially, especially when they talk it through to the very end and how they got to the end, just encourage the coachee to think that they're on a journey rather than this is it, so there's a process. You're on that journey. It's just a setback, or it's just it's just a little hitch.
Yeah, it's put it in context, isn't it?
Yeah, and you just move on, and the end. It's not actually the end until you've overcome it.
Exactly, and I think it's kind of on that point of a coach opening up about a vulnerability, and then it helps the client understand that they're not alone and that they're on a journey and everything. It's also important to know that coaches have coaches, right? We all need our own coaches as well. So it's important for people clients to understand that as well, that every coach is going on their own journey with another coach as well, where they're the ones in the hot seat, so to speak.
So are we willing to share one thing that we feel vulnerable about as coaches to our audience?
I can share one that I kind of shared. I think I shared it on last week's. Did I share it on last week's episode? I can't even remember now. And it was just around when I was first starting out on the coaching journey and how I wasn't progressing as much as I wanted to. And it was a complete fear, like a physical, almost not pain, but like an almost ache in the chest and in the gut, fear of failing and being a failure in the eyes of my partner.
Yes.
That was a big thing for me at the start of the coaching journey, and it took a couple of sessions to realize that is what was kind of stopping me from doing stuff. I was essentially going to do stuff that I should be doing to move my business forward, but then I just procrastinate and do something different, like going on social media or doing a social media post, but making that post design last for hours, and then I'm like, oh no, I can't do anything now. It's too late.
That's touching on the limiting beliefs as well from the last couple of weeks, isn't it? So
yeah, I feel like it was in one of the last episodes.
Yeah, no, it was. Like when B mentioned about my absolute dread and fear about accepting a speaking engagement, and just all of that. It was a learning experience, and I think I came to the group and expressed that fear. So vulnerability is accepting and expressing a fear to a degree. What about you, Sarah?
I think the one that just continues to rumble for me is a fear again. It's interesting, isn't it? It's all fear. There's a fear of commitment, and I do think that's linked to failure, fear of failing. Yeah, if I commit totally to this, will I fail?
What if
I fail? Yeah, that's a biggie to share tonight. Yeah, I think that's probably one that's rumbled all the way through.
Do you know, if you dig deep on a fear of failure, do you know, I kind of find that somewhere down there as well, there's a little bit of a fear of success as well, because success means you have to change your life. Things change, and if you're happy, and your survival mechanisms and instinctive survival mechanisms are telling you that you're all right, Jack. You start being successful, you're going to have to, things are going to change, and it might not be that great. So fear of failure, fear of success. I don't think there's a lot of...
you're bang on there, love. You're bang on. Yeah,
all right, Jack.
And it's changed, isn't it? I mean, change is a classic for anybody, isn't it? I think we do this.
Change.
No, we don't. But as humans, no, absolutely
we're surviving.
not.
We're getting food. We're being looked after. We're keeping warm. All this, our brains don't like change.
Amen.
There we.
Amen.
Is that me?
Oh, Jack. And on that note, shall we end it there?
Yeah. Wrap it up,
Nice,
Mr. Whitehead.
Mr. Whitehead. And that wraps up another episode of the Naked Coach Collective. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Tune in next week for our special guest interview with Monica Martin. And that's a wrap.
Okay, everyone, be there.
Oh, God. I've ruined it.
We never.
Every time, ever. Ian.
Yeah.
I'm so stupid.
Every time. Do it.
And remember, folks.
Be there.
Be there.
Rewind.
Let's try again. And remember, folks.
Be there. Be there.
Be naked.